Hey, Doug.
Hey.
Working later than usual again tonight?
No, traffic's just a mess.
Then you're probably ready for a cold one. Straight from the tap?
You guessed it. Somebody rear-ended somebody else down by the hotel. Traffic was backed up all the way down the bridge.
You should have seen it last week. There you go.
So, when did you become an artist?
That's my niece's. Not bad, huh?
You know, I think there's a Picasso hidden in every child, just trying to get out.
Did you hear about that accident last Friday night out by the frontage road? Killed my niece's best friend.
What happened?
I don't know. Some guy just had too much to drink and he blew through a stop sign.
The whole evening had a weird feeling. You know, watching Valerie pull out in that van, I got an icy feeling that night when Susan left. I don't know why. Something didn't feel right.
I just thought it was a nightmare, and I kept trying to pinch myself. I couldn't exactly reach over, but, you know, just kept telling myself it's a nightmare.
You know, Ann was kind of a visionary. She had said to her friends that night, "I wish I was in the hospital so everybody'd wait on me hand and foot." She had made that statement at the football game 2 hours prior to the accident.
My house is situated so I could hear the helicopters come. And I watched out my window as these helicopters went over my house. And I didn't know who it was. And I still had a feeling that I knew these people. And I did, and it was Annie.
I was in an accident once. I wasn't drinking, of course. I wasn't even driving. We got busted up a little, but it was nothing that a few stitches couldn't fix.
They were doing what every one of us do with our children. Go out to McDonald's, jump in the car on your way home. It could happen to any one of us.
Last thing I remember is just going all the way around McDonald's because it's a one-way and turning back onto Bush's frontage road and traveling down a few feet. That's it. It's blank.
Unit 214, 1051 to Bush's frontage road in Cape St. Clair off Route 50. Two-vehicular accident with possible injuries.
14 is central, 10-4 en route.
Unit 214, 10-4.
I have 5 victims with multiple injuries. Need EMS to respond ASAP.
214, medevac has been dispatched.
I don't really remember him running into us. I just remember headlights coming towards us and then waking up with broken glass and a lady holding my hand through the window.
It's kind of like the All-American Friday night. We were up at the local football game. I'm the coach of Drew's team. And I actually watched the medevac helicopters land on Route 50 behind the football field.
I remember helicopters going over the field, but I would have never imagined it would have been my mom shipped off to a hospital with my sister.
One vehicle was T-boned, hit broadside, by another vehicle which had run a stop sign.
I have a dreamlike sequence of seeing light and it being dark and it being cold.
The accident scene we've been to many times, but we've never had one go into a ravine. So that told me immediately that there had been a lot of momentum and a lot of force in the collision.
When I woke up in the car, all I saw was her eyes rolled back in her head and her face was like really swollen and stuff and blood all over it.
Drew and I went about our normal routine, you know, cleaned up after the football game. I was just sitting here downstairs, you know, just about the same location I'm sitting right now. And the phone rings, and it's a social worker from Johns Hopkins University and telling me that there's been a bad accident.
I came home about 10:30 at night and was checking messages, and the phone rang. And I called a couple friends of mine right after that who came over. We spent some time praying for Julie and the kids.
All right, I'll be honest with you. I drink and drive. I do. But I never drink more than I can handle. Believe me, you've got absolutely nothing to worry about with me on the road.
A lot of people at my school, they drink and they think it's just so great. They talk about how they got smashed and how they didn't remember anything. And And I was like, well, I must have missed it in my cool book because I don't remember where it said that you have to drink in order to be cool.
You just have good luck if you drink and drive and don't get caught and don't kill somebody.
If you were caught drunk driving, then, like, you should go to jail, because it's not fair, because once you're dead, you can't come back to life. You're gone. I mean, it's like killing somebody.
One of the first things that we wanted to do after we helped the kids through the grieving process was to turn this tragedy, this negative event, into something positive. So through our enrichment teacher, we started working on an investigation of the drunk driving laws, and they've gone to the legislature and worked real hard, and right now they seem to be on the verge of making some progress and changing some laws in the state of Maryland.
Currently, if, as far as the mandatory testing goes, you only have to go through the mandatory blood alcohol test if there's a fatality on the scene. The law currently says that if it doesn't happen on the scene, then you don't have to be tested. And we think that's a big loophole that we're going to try to close off by including the language life-threatening injury.
You've got the control when you make the decision, but once you've decided that you're going to drink and drive and you get behind the wheel of that car, you are out of control.
Nobody ever talks about somebody taking a breathalyzer test that's going to prove them innocent. It can just as well prove them innocent as it can prove them guilty.
If a person gets behind the wheel and they know they're drunk, they shouldn't drive. And they have to choose whether they want to put somebody's life on the line.
It's scary to think that on Friday or Saturday night there are many, many people that may be coming at you that are driving a 4,000-pound weapon.
It's very similar to a gun in the same makeup. You know, and you got to get across to these people that, you know, what they are doing is basically, you know, murder with motor vehicle.
When there's alcohol involved, I'm not sure you can even classify them as accidents anymore. Somebody did something on purpose to help cause this, so it's not an accident anymore.
It's not an accident when someone chooses to drink and drive. They've made that choice. The other people just happen to be the unlucky people that are out there on the road when they have made this poor choice.
Driving is a privilege. It's not a right. And with that privilege comes responsibility. And one of them is that you don't drink and drive.
I've been in the hospital before, not just for those stitches. It's really kind of an interesting place. Cute nurses taking care of you. It's not as bad as they say.
Didn't ask all the important questions about Anne. I knew she was having surgery to her brain, but I didn't ask details. I guess I wasn't ready.
She had taken a turn for the worse, and he broke down then, and of course we broke down, and I guess that's when it really started to hit me that she might not make it.
Walking into her room, seeing her on the ventilator.
Her face was, you know, pretty traumatic.
Seeing her head all bandaged up, her eyes taped closed.
Those are the kind of things that just stick in your mind and they stay with you.
And the non-movement. I knew my baby wasn't going to make it.
As the phone calls kept coming through, we realized the severity of this.
I remember sitting on the steps and hugging my sister and saying, Annie's going to be okay. Annie's going to be all right, you know. Things like this happen. It's not as serious as you think. And the next morning, my mom woke me up and told me she was dead.
You know, they had asked about Annie constantly through the days that they were in there. How is she doing? Have you seen her? You know, why haven't we seen her? And when we told her that she had died, they didn't believe it.
I was just stunned. I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it.
She was very quiet and very stoic at first.
I kept telling myself not to cry because I did cry a little bit and it hurt so badly.
What would go through my mind was the thought that Susan would never be able to hold her Annie the way I was holding my Erin and comforting her again.
That was a big event. I mean, she died. I mean, it wasn't just she broke her leg or something. She's dead. There's no more of her. I mean, she's gone. My friend called me. And he just said, Anne's been in an accident and she might not make it. And I was like, you kidding? And he wasn't.
It got a lot worse when I had to come here to work on Monday morning, only to find out that my other students hadn't heard the news, and many of my colleagues hadn't heard the news yet.
First period class was the class that, of course, I had Anne in. All I could think of was Anne's vacant seat.
I guess the thing I remember most vividly about Drew and trying to explain that Anne was gone, he made the statement that, I don't want to be an only child. And I didn't have an answer for him.
Well, I think it was all a dream because no bad stuff has really ever happened to me.
I'd go to sleep thinking about it. I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it. It was my first thought when I get up in the morning.
Modern medicine does a beautiful job in trying valiantly to put your babies back together, but this time it wasn't meant to be. And Annie was gone.
What's all the fuss about? I mean, people drink all the time. Do I look like I'm bothering anyone? Of course not.
It is a huge pebble that drops in a brook, and those waves will reverberate through people's hearts and their heads for the rest of their lives.
I can't imagine the pain of losing a child that way.
It's not just a loss to the family. It's not just a loss to people who knew her. I think the world is lost. I think she would have done something significant.
The people that are injured are still there, and the helicopters are still there, or the fire trucks or the ambulances. And as we debrief them, we're seeing how they are and making sure that they're okay emotionally, because it takes a toll on the drivers.
In the Talmud, there's a saying, when you save a life, you save the world. And so obviously the opposite of that is true. When someone's life is taken, you don't just take that person's life, you take the world. And the reason why is because not only do you take that person, but you take every single generation that could have succeeded that person, and every single thing and person that human being would have touched. And that whole that starts out in one place just grows and grows and grows.
I handle my grief the same way I handle my drink, like a man. My father always said, son, there's no time to cry in your beer if you're too busy drinking it.
Death, a finality, and all their fantasies and all their stories. People come back to life, it doesn't really happen, movies are movies, but this is real, and she's not coming back.
She's been in an accident and never gonna see her again. So probably just actually making myself actually believe it. Probably the hardest thing.
Why did it have to be her? Why were they there at that time? You never come up with an answer to that. You can ask yourself that question as many times as you want, you'll never get an answer. And that's what makes it hard to deal with it.
When you lose a child, it's part of you inside dies.
What happens in a grief reaction after you lose a loved one to death, a sudden, unexpected death like this, is that the person typically will live on an emotional elevator, if you will, where they will drop uncontrollably in depths of despair and may stay there for days or weeks, at times months.
Very difficult to tell an 11-year-old that their best friend was killed.
To know that somebody got behind the wheel of a car and stole the life of a 12-year-old girl who had the most promise that I've seen in a long time, it's hard to find the words for that.
Well, that's really how you handle your grief is to think of all the things she meant to you. The best times, the funniest times, the worst times.
But I wanted to say that this is God's plan. This is, you know, this is a terrible thing and I wish it never happened. This is what God wanted for some reason. I couldn't say it though because she wouldn't believe it. You know, she'd say, this is my friend, she's not supposed to be dead.
When you hear about people dying on the TV before it was an accident, it wasn't a big deal. It's like, oh, somebody else is dead. That's a normal thing, but then once you have your best friend die, it's really different.
Said simply, a tragedy like this will, for months and at times years and at times decades, affect family members. It'll affect the way they think, the way they feel, and the way they behave.
12 years wasn't enough. I guess maybe I'm greedy as a mother. I wanted a whole lifetime. I wanted to be the first one to go. I didn't want it to be Annie. I just loved her too much, I guess.
I had a friend who died when we were kids. I try not to think about him too often. I don't know why, just something about his memory seems to bother me.
I have a lot of mental pictures stored. Most of them, she's laughing and giggling.
She'd write poems and little plays. And she'd write them at night when it's like 12 o'clock in the morning and I couldn't get to sleep because her light was always on.
She put that little extra edge on life. And we have to discover, Susan and I and Drew have to discover how to get that edge back in life.
You could be in a horrible mood and she could get anybody out of it just because she was like sunshine coming into a room.
There's a picture of my arms wrapped around her and her face is exactly how I remember that. And that's the picture that I'll carry with me forever.
Well, I'm glad I didn't see her after the accident because I didn't want to remember her like that.
Where Ann was killed, there's a cross erected. A fellow did a beautiful job of building a cross. And I would think that each one of us passes it several times a day, and there's not a time that we go by that we don't think of her. And this is a child that we didn't know.
I think this had to happen for some important reason. I have to think that. I can't think that it was meaningless. I want to believe that maybe it was supposed to teach this class of 2000 that what we accomplish here on Earth is really important and that we have to try to make a difference.
I've always appreciated my children. They are my life. It's like my 28 years before her was nothing until I became alive and became a mother. And it's pretty darn dull without her.
When you remember her, you're not sad.
Annie is a heart. Annie saw and felt things that most of us can't see and feel. And then she helped us see and feel them.
What am I going to miss most? Just everything.
I usually picture her, you know, with me in my room upstairs, just writing something down.
This was a bright, enthusiastic, really a blessed girl.
Somehow I'll be able to get through the rest of my life without her, but I don't know how or what it will become, but I'll have those memories. That'll just have to be enough, I guess.
Like I said before, there's a Picasso hidden within each of us that's just dying to get out. I happen to be the pinball Picasso of the universe. Oops.
Why, as a teacher, do we put in all of that effort to work with a child with such ability and then have it all wasted?
But I'm luckier than most mothers in that Annie was able to leave me so much of her thoughts written in paper, all of her poems and her stories and her plays.
Her poetry startled all the adults in the building, how wonderful it was.
Well, potential. We can't put a limit on what she could have done.
I think we all realized here at Magothy River Middle that we'd been given a gift. And when we found out it was taken away from us, we'll just never be the same.
The last day we had Ann was a field trip for our team, which was really sad because Ann's favorite movie was The Secret Garden, her favorite book, and that's what we did. We'd gone to see The Secret Garden. I had that class at the end of the day that day, and they drew their version of The Secret Garden. They were working on that, and what their secret garden would be like, and that's the last we saw of Ann.
I used to tell Annie about Grandma's garden and how I loved as a child to go in there and dig in it and cut the flowers and weed it, my mom always had gardens, and I built Annie her own special garden out in the back, and she could see it from her bedroom window. And one day, this is what she wrote. My garden's alive. Oh yes it is, with pink daisies and mums that hold their babies' breaths close in sight, with crabby snapdragons and little yellow marigolds blowing in the wind,
and delicate pansies with pockets of posies, elegant roses and tomboyish black-eyed Susans, feisty tiger lilies and puckering tulips. My garden's alive, but can't you see? All the magic, it's all about me.
Hey, Doug, let me call you a cab.
I don't need a cab. I know where I live.
Come on, Doug. What do you say?
She was a delight to behold, just like a garden would be. With the wind blowing through it, with the butterflies landing on them, it was just, that was my daughter. I wish you could have met her.